Hello and welcome everybody again to the Deep Puck Podcast. Joined today by Mr. Austin Howlett. You probably know him better as Auddie James on Twitter and YouTube. Auddie, how you doing, man?
I'm great. Thank you very much for having me. This is awesome. I was super excited when you reached out. I listened to that first episode with Yohi. Yohi? How do I pronounce his name? Yohi?
Josh Yohi.
Yeah, I thought so. I see him on Twitter all the time, and I'm like, man, this is awesome. So anyways, thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah, no worries. So, Auddie, you're a Pittsburgh Penguins fan living in Alberta. And I know you also follow and stay pretty in touch with the Calgary Flames. Anything else?
No, I mean, for hockey, it's mostly just the Penguins and the Flames. I mean, been a Flames fan since birth, pretty much. So that'll never change. But I find that wherever I live in Canada, I tend to root for the closest team. You always have to have a Canadian team when you're Canadian. So, I mean, when I lived in Ottawa, I followed closely with the Senators, unfortunately. And then moving to Calgary, I just kind of grew close to this team. And I've always been a Flames guy. Like, I've always loved Iginla. I loved when he came to Pittsburgh. That was incredible.
Yeah, that was great.
Incredible. Didn't get the results he wanted, but I mean, always been a Flames guy. So yeah, no, I mean, like whatever's closest just seems to be the team for me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was born in the Pittsburgh area, so followed the Penguins closely growing up. Got really into hockey right around the time of the Paul Coffey trade, and they brought him in there. That netted us, well, a Stanley Cup and a half, basically, because we traded him partway through the '92 season. But
before he could get a second one,
that was really good. And he brought, I know Lemieux kind of invigorated the fan base, but I thought Coffey was like that final piece that pushed us over the hump and got us to that first Stanley Cup. So he's always got a special place in my heart.
Totally. And if I was around to watch those games, I'm sure I would say the same thing.
For sure. So a little bit of news going on. Let's cover this one real quick. Seattle recently announced on Twitter that it looks like they're going to be holding a press conference tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, depending on where you're at, but 9 a.m. Pacific to finally announce their team name. And I'm kind of in the who gives a fuck phase anymore.
Yeah, you know what? I would say I'm the opposite. I kind of got like legitimate goosebumps. I saw that Kraken. The first thing I saw, Kraken was trending on Twitter under NHL, and I'm like, "There's no way they made the announcement already. There's no way." So I go to their NHL Seattle or whatever the hell it's called now, their Twitter page, their verified Twitter page, and I'm like, "Oh, they changed their avatar. They changed their banner," and I'm like, "Man, this is legit. Like, did they make an announcement?" And then I see the video, and I'm like, "Oh boy, here we go. Something's coming." Funny enough, I actually just like right as you messaged me, I just recorded a video for the channel where we're gonna watch that and we're gonna go through it and react to it. But I would say I'm not in the I don't give a fuck phase, but I'm certainly there's bigger things to talk about. I think they maybe picked not a bad time to make the announcement, but there's just so many other topics right now that it's like almost irrelevant. But I'm still excited.
Yeah, they missed a huge window where there was like literally nothing to talk about for 3.5 months. You could have had weeks worth of spotlight. Your merchandising sale would have been through the roof, but now you got playoff hockey starting next week. It's like, how do you compete with the merchandising for fans buying playoff memorabilia, buying playoff gear when you miss that window? I just don't think I think the timing's terrible.
I'm of the same opinion as you. I totally think that it should have came sooner than now. I think like right before the playoff start seems like a very odd time. I don't exactly recall when Vegas did it, but I think it was more climactic.
It was around this time for Vegas too, but it wasn't playoff hockey. It was
right,
like
exactly.
Middle of the off season.
We're in a completely different situation, right? Like we have this whole break and everything. But I think the perfect time would have been when there was nothing to talk about.
Yeah, and then you could just start marketing your merchandise. You could have, like, fans in that lull could have had something to latch onto, I think.
Not to say they won't do well with merchandise. I think they still will.
Oh, they certainly will.
But I do totally agree with you. I think that the timing's off, but I think that the excitement is there for some fans. I know you're of the opinion it's old news, but I was excited. I was genuinely excited. I thought, you know what, this is going to be good. But at the same time, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, man, we're like you said, a week away from playoff hockey, and this is what comes out. Like, odd timing.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of news around the Calgary Flames. Saw some articles, some videos. I know Gio touched on it a little bit last week on one of his videos about the Johnny Gaudreau trade rumors that seem to, I think for the past 2 off seasons, they've been kind of circulating and popping up here and there. A lot of ties from him in Philadelphia, New Jersey, being from that area. But I don't see a logical scenario that Johnny Gaudreau leaves Calgary right now. They're one of the teams that are in a pretty good spot from the salary cap standpoint going into this offseason.
Yeah, it's certainly always been one of those overshadowing kind of topics that Calgary sports media likes to talk about. When there's no news, they're talking about Gaudreau getting shipped off. But in the same breath, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility that this play-in / playoff could really dictate the future of him in Calgary. I'm not sold on him. I'm not the hugest fan. I know he's great and he's an unbelievable talent. But for me, I just don't think he wants to be there. It doesn't seem like he's genuinely invested in Calgary or the Flames organization. He was nowhere to be found last year in the playoffs. That could be fluky. He's had an off year this year compared to the 99-point year he had last year. A lot of memes going around Twitter about where's Johnny Gaudreau on the side of the milk carton and stuff like that. Have you seen this man? So it's certainly like a hot topic. It's always something that's brought up at some point throughout the year, multiple times in that year, in the same year. But I do think that it's a good possibility. Whether or not the return is what they want of the teams you mentioned, I don't know what that looks like for a player who, like I said, had 99 points. He was 1 point shy of that 100-point mark last year. We know he's great. We know he's crafty with the puck. We know he's got speed. But in the same breath, he's missing a lot of important categories, especially on a line with Elias Lindholm and Sean Monahan. So I guess time will tell, and maybe this playoff / play-in will be a good indicator to see what the next move is. But at the same time, too, there's a lot of guys that could be knocking on the door in the farm, too. So it's not that he would be replaced by one of them, but they certainly have options on the wing. And I think if you're able to move him now for the return you want to get, at the end of the day, I don't think you move him if you don't get the return you want. It's not like it's a must-trade situation, right? So
yeah,
the timing's got to be right. The return has to be what the Flames want, and it should be something that puts them forward, not moves them 2 steps back. So I guess, like I said, time will tell. The playoff / play-in will certainly help dictate some of those moves.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the issue, and probably with the Calgary media and hockey perception in general, a lot of people think that name recognition and how that player performs is synonymous, not recognizing the importance of the position they play, the line mates they play with, the team that's around them. Gaudreau has obviously been one of the better players on that team for the past couple of years. And up until Tkachuk is finally starting to kind of come into his own and step into more of a leadership role, which I don't think Johnny Gaudreau is fit as a leader. I don't think he's got the personality to be a locker room president, and that's not a knock on Gaudreau at all. But I think as a can you still hear me good?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
You're kind of choppy, but I can still hear you a little.
Yeah, I got a pop-up saying my internet connection was weird. Okay, but yeah, it's hard for a winger to take over the game. You know, center icemen generally have a more important role in that regard of taking over a game. And I don't think Gaudreau has always had, you know, that top tier center iceman. And I think that's something that Calgary may want to address rather than looking at moving Gaudreau, is looking at finding pieces that better support his play style.
Yeah, totally. And one of the things that kind of is synonymous with the Johnny Gaudreau talks is the Sean Monahan talks. And people are saying, they're fed up with him and he's the problem and all that. I still am a firm believer. Like Bill Peters did this a lot. He shuffled the lines. He tried to see what worked. Jeff Ward kind of just stuck with what worked, what Bill Peters kind of put together in that Monahan, Gaudreau, and Lindholm line. But you're right in the sense that I don't think he's had the right supporting cast around him on that line, nor do I think the supporting cast is within the organization right now, if that makes sense. He's certainly a different winger in the sense of what you expect out of a player of his role, like a top line winger. You know what I mean? Not to say he's not effective, but certainly there are elements of his game that are missing, but the line that he plays on doesn't complement those missing pieces. For example, the power play unit that he's on, he's the quarterback on that power play unit. You can basically, if the Flames are on the power play, you can dictate exactly what's going to happen from the start to the minute they try to get a zone entry. Johnny's going to come with the puck right up the middle. He's going to, like I tell everybody, I go on a couple Flames podcasts. I have one right after this that I'm going to be talking on as well. And I say the same thing. If you want to defend Johnny Gaudreau on the power play, all you got to do is put the slightest amount of pressure. He's the easiest guy to defend against because he's either going to bobble the puck up or he's going to put himself into a corner, put himself by the wall because he's afraid of a hit. And that's not something that complements that first line. It's not something that complements that power play unit. So I just think that the supporting cast around him doesn't really do him any favors. Not to say that they're not effective, because that top line was really good that last season when we met up with Colorado in the first round.
Yeah, agreed. Reminds me a lot of Martin St. Louis. I don't think he has the skill level that Martin St. Louis has, but I mean the size and the comparables are all there. But he's not a guy that's going to win 50-50 battles on the boards, anything like that. He's a guy that likes to play in space, play out in the middle of the ice and out in the open. Not a guy that likes to play on the half wall. And I think that's the kind of line that you need around him is go-getters and guys that go and get below the net and win those puck battles below to kind of free up space for him. And I think Monahan does that pretty well. But Lindholm's also another guy that tends to like to find the soft areas of the ice and try to score from soft areas. And I don't think you can have two guys like that on a line because you're going to lose the 50-50 battles below the paint.
Totally. I 100% agree. And Lindholm is one of those guys who I always considered to be one of the not elite, but better two-way forwards in the NHL. And especially when he came to Calgary, I obviously paid a closer eye to him. His 200-foot game is incredible. He back checks. He plays incredible defense. And that's something that should complement that as well. But I just don't know what it is. And at the end of the day, it boils down to what I think the root cause is. And I don't think Johnny wants to be there. And that's something I said from the beginning. It's something that a lot of people in Calgary media and people who try to cover the Flames talk about, is the fact that we don't think Johnny Hockey really wants to be a Calgary Flame. And it hasn't been any more evident than it was this year. He certainly wasn't the player that he was last regular season, and he kind of transpired what he had in the postseason there in that first round against Colorado into the regular season. Cue the Johnny Gaudreau missing on the milk carton memes. But yeah, it just seems as though there's some kind of missing piece on that top line. I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I don't think it's Johnny Hockey. That's not to say he wouldn't fit into somebody else's obviously their top line. I was going to say top six, but he's certainly a first-line guy. It's not to say he wouldn't be effective and it wouldn't work in another system. I just don't think the Calgary system is the one that works out for him.
Yeah, I agree entirely with that. On Philadelphia, how well would he look on a line with Couturier and Giroux on a line with Johnny Hockey on the other wing? I think that would be almost an unstoppable line. Totally.
And that's obviously we're Penguins guys, so we don't like to talk too much about Philly, but you got to give credit where credit's due. And they did some pretty incredible things. Alain Vigneault, incredibly talented guy as well. They did some good things this year. And I feel like adding Johnny into the mix only makes things better in that situation there. So who knows? I mean, Philly's a very viable option. It's home. It's a place he's familiar with, and certainly could be them. New Jersey could be I know the Rangers have been thrown in the mix too of discussion, but at the end of the day, I like I said, the play-in and playoff is going to really dictate, I think, the future of Johnny in Calgary.
Yeah, it's certainly going to dictate his value going into the offseason because, if he has another dud of a playoff series like he did in Colorado, like he did against Colorado last year, then I can't envision a scenario where Calgary moves on from him there because that would be selling at the absolute lowest of value, and I don't think they want to do that right now, especially not with the current cap situation they have.
100%. Yeah, I would agree with that point as well.
Alternatively, also looking at their cap situation, their blue line is about to be obliterated this offseason. They're about to lose 4 out of their top 6 defensemen this offseason. You got Hamonic's a UFA, Brody's a UFA. Yep. So, they're going to be looking to replace a lot of pretty integral pieces to their blue line.
Yeah, and I think one of the saving graces is that next season we will get a healthy Juuso Välimäki. Obviously, a guy that we've been waiting for a long time. We know he had that ACL injury that put him out a couple of years ago. He missed all of this season. He's from all points and all signs indicate that he's ready to play now. But I don't think now is the time to play him. You got to wait till next season for future considerations. It has all to do with Seattle and whatnot. TJ Brodie is honestly one of those. He's one of my least favorite Calgary Flames. He is, I think, a defensive liability, and if not for Mark Giordano, would look like a complete fool out there. He really is, like, Gio is really the glue on that top pairing, and Brodie is just, some of the things he does is incredibly questionable, and I can't believe that he's still a top pairing defenseman. Hanifin and Hamonic, they're kind of like the on and off pairing to me. When one's hot, the other's not. It's been like that since they've been paired together. Hamonic, I find, is the more true put his body on the line defenseman, not afraid to drop down and block shots. Like, his block shot numbers last year were ridiculous. He puts his body on the line night in and night out. But I think of the pending UFAs, I think Hamonic would be the one that I would go after. I don't know. I would honestly, Brodie's as good as gone to me. And I know a lot of Flames fans agree on that point as well. But you got guys coming up too. You got Shillington, who's kind of been knocking on the door for quite some time now. You got a Välimäki that's coming in. Rasmus Andersson's defining himself as a top 4 defenseman in this league. And I think that with the right mix of, veterans and these younger guys coming in, like Rasmus Andersson looked incredible with Mark Giordano whenever he was paired with him. When Brodie was out with his unfortunate, he had convulsions on the ice. It was something to do neurologically, I believe. But when he was out and Rasmus Andersson was filling those top pairing minutes, they looked incredible together, and they've looked like that every time they've been paired together. So I guess the future is kind of dull in the sense that we've got some guys that are probably going to walk, but in the same breath, there's guys that are knocking on the door that are ready to come in. So I don't think they're in as much deep water as people may think, just for those reasons of those young guys coming in too.
Right. And not to discredit Travis Hamonic for his decision. Obviously, each person's going to approach the decision as to whether to play or not play right now differently. And Travis Hamonic did a lot of self-reflection and decided to forego the play-in series. Do you think that will influence how GMs approach him in the upcoming offseason as far as his unrestricted free agent status?
I don't know if it necessarily puts too much of a cross beside his name or an asterisk beside his name. I think he's doing it for the right reasons, and a lot of people, everybody I've talked to respects him for that reason. He lost his father at a young age, and I think, a lot of it had to do with family. If he did get sick and if worse came to worse, his young kids would be left without a father, right? So I totally get where he's coming from, and I respect the hell out of him for the decision that he made, because it's not an easy one.
No,
These
for
guys
sure.
are paid to play hockey, and the last thing they want to be doing is sitting on the shelf here when their team is competing for the Stanley Cup. So I don't know if it puts as much of an asterisk beside his name than most people think. But I do wonder, like, just it honestly depends on what this virus or how long this virus is going to take and whatnot. Because honestly, I could foresee him not playing next season either, for the same reasons that he's sitting out for this one, depending on what the situation is with COVID and everything that's going on. So that might influence, like, obviously he's going to want a contract, but if people know that he's not going to want to play, then nobody's going to give him one, right? You're not going to waste that cap money for a guy who's just going to sit out.
Yeah, I agree entirely with that. So, looking at the upcoming series, speaking of teams with no blue lines, Calgary is going to be taking on the Winnipeg Jets in the play-in series. Obviously, Winnipeg's a tough team to defend as far as their top six go. They've got really good top two lines with Blake Wheeler, Kyle Connor. Then you got Patrick Laine, Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, just a really, really talented top six. Drops off a little bit in their third and fourth lines. But then their blue line has just been decimated this year with Bufflin's unexpected absence, losing Tyler Myers, Jacob Trouba, losing him in free agency. They've basically lost four of their top six defensemen. So that was tough for them to replace. How do you approach this series as a Calgary Flames coach, a member of the Calgary Flames coaching staff? What are you looking to exploit with Winnipeg?
So one of the things that I think, and one of the things I've always said about this series, is it's going to come down to the willingness of the bottom six in Calgary. And looking at training camp thus far, the Dylan Dubé, Milan Lucic, Sam Bennett, those bottom six guys are the ones that are shining. Zach Rinaldo looks incredible. He's probably not going to start in the bottom six, but it's these guys who, and it was the same story last year, because the only two people that showed up were Sam Bennett and Mike Smith, two guys that I am not high on whatsoever, especially Mike Smith in the regular season and Sam Bennett his whole career as a Flame. But these guys, they really step up. Dylan Dubé's had an incredible camp. Him and Derek Ryan on the third line, they've worked well all year together. And then they threw Lucic in the mix, and Lucic found his feet there as well. So that third line has had some success this season leading up to the pause. And I think that as long as they can translate that bottom six play into this play-in series, and obviously Andrew Mangiapane as well, he was playing on the second line. He saw minutes on the third line as well throughout the year. Just these underdog guys that you don't think of are going to really dictate the offense in Calgary, I think. As for the blue line, we've got them beat. There's no question, even with the aforementioned issues that we had when we were talking about that beforehand. But what scares me the most is Connor Hellebuyck. Absolutely scares the living shit out of me. And, he would probably be on my ballot for the Hart this year as well. Like he was just absolutely lights out incredible all year. So if the Jets can ride a hot and healthy Connor Hellebuyck and they can find the back of the net, because again, the Flames need to also figure out who they're going to start. There's been no real indicator of is it going to be Riddick, is it going to be Talbot? Because keep in mind, Riddick hasn't had any playoff experience in his career.
Right.
All of last postseason was Mike Smith, and he stood on his head. Yep. And then Cam Talbot is again putting on an incredible camp. So like it's kind of like if you're Jeff Ward right now, who do you start? It's a tough question. But if they can ride Connor Hellebuyck and find ways to put the puck in the back of the net, then I think the Jets take this one, honestly. But at the same time, I could really see this being closer than a lot of people think.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think Winnipeg can score, and I think when their top six decide to take over a game, that they've got all the weapons and tools necessary to do it. And the issue with me, Connor Hellebuyck's going to be Connor Hellebuyck, But the thing about the way these playoffs are going to be structured is you're going to play some back-to-back games. You're going to have 2 games in 2 nights, 3 games in 4 nights. You're going to have that type of schedule, and you're probably going to have to start your second goaltender at some point in these playoffs. I don't think any team is going into this playoffs with the mindset that we need to ride our starter the whole way through. And looking back on it now, how smart are the Toronto Maple Leafs for going out and getting Jack Campbell to understand that, we can't ride Freddie Anderson like we always have. And so that's a really savvy move in hindsight. But I think trying to start Hellebuck that much might be a downfall. But for the first round, he's going to start all 5 games if it goes 5 games. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But I think as the playoffs go on, goaltending depth is going to be important, whereas it's not usually that important in the playoffs.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the same could be said about our Penguins in their series against the Habs. Anything can happen if a team rides a hot Carey Price, right?
Right.
I would say the tandem in Pittsburgh is, with Matt Murray, a little lackluster compared to what we see in Carey Price. But bringing it back to the Jets and the Flames, I think we have them beat on a tandem. But if it's strictly Connor Hellebuck, then he's going to win games 9 times out of 10 over Cam Talbot or David Rittich.
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking at that the same way. But on the same token, I would take a tandem of Matt Murray and Tristan Jarry over Carey Price and
whoever.
Who is it?
Whoever. No, I don't even like.
Yeah, I don't know who it is. It used to be the Penguins goaltender before they released it. Became from Dallas. I can't remember who it is now. It'll come to me in a few minutes, I'm sure. But okay, and speaking of the Penguins, a little bit of news came out today. Elliot Friedman tweeted out that he believes that the issue with Sidney Crosby is an abdominal strain, and that's the reason that he's missed the last couple of days. Still hearing from a lot of people in Pittsburgh that there's nothing of concern. I don't know if you've read any up on that or anything like that.
I didn't hear about the abdominal strain. The only thing that would concern me about that abdominal strain, correct me if I'm wrong, he had hernia surgery.
Yeah, he had sports hernia surgery in October, November, and that's what caused him to miss, I think it was 28 games this year. So
right.
That's something. It could be just like a minor after effect.
It could be anything, totally. And I'll tell you, I had a sports hernia, and I had it fixed about 1.5 to 2 years ago. And to this day, it still gets, you still get strains, you still get aches, but it's probably all precautionary if you ask me, if it is anything related to that hernia. Yeah. Because again, like my doctor told me, it takes time to actually fully heal. I don't think they rushed him back by any stretch. He's totally okay to play, but any little tweak, any little, movement that you're not used to or something like in that general area could cause that pain. I don't think people have much to worry about. If it is just an abdominal strain, it's not going to be something that's going to sideline him for the duration of this play-in. So yeah, I mean, he should be okay. I'm not too worried. I'm not gonna fret over it by any stretch. We still have a good amount of time before action takes place. So I'm hoping he'll be good. And by the sounds of it, I'm sure he will.
Yeah. All right. So let's something you did last week with Josh Uhe. Let's go and take a look at each one of these series and see how you envision them playing out, just from the play-in standpoint. So in the West, the 5-12 matchup is Edmonton and Chicago. Still no Corey Crawford from what I'm gathering in Chicago. So How do you see that series going?
Honestly, I think it's Edmonton's to lose. I don't foresee this being a very long series, if I'm being brutally honest with you. The fact of the matter is a lot of people talk about Chicago and the fact that they've got playoff experience. They were a dynasty. These guys are aging. They're not the same players they were when they won those Stanley Cups. It's a completely different system. Joel Quenneville coached a hell of a system when they won those Cups as well. Yep. He's nowhere to be found in Chicago right now. So I think that's a bit of a BS reasoning as to why I think the Chicago Blackhawks could win or why people think the Chicago Blackhawks could win. But obviously, like the play of Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, and if Mike Smith can be Mike Smith from last playoffs, then the Oilers are going to be a force to be reckoned with, and that pains me to say, being a Flame supporter, but I could see them making a pretty deep run here.
Yeah, I'm seeing that the same way. I'm thinking Edmonton in 3 without Corey Crawford, and 4 if Crawford does come back.
I totally agree. Yeah, I'm on the same page.
Next one is Nashville, Arizona. How you got this one going?
Oh, this is a tricky one for me. This was one of those ones that when I looked at this, I kind of thought like it really could go either way. This is probably one of the tighter matchups, I think. Nashville has the advantage of Roman Josi, who could very well win the damn Norris this year. He's absolutely incredible. He had more zone entries than McDavid this year. So like the guy knows how to play the puck. He's smart with the puck. He's crafty with it, and he's defensively responsible. But in the same breath, Arizona is one of those teams that kind of surprised me and took me by a bit of a shock this year. And then obviously acquiring a guy like Taylor Hall, that's obviously no small feat, and he's certainly not going to hurt your team in any capacity. So, man, as much as I just think it's too close for me. What I would love to hear your thoughts before I give a take.
So the way I'm seeing this, obviously the blue line favors Nashville quite a bit. Their offense is spotty and questionable at best, like beyond Philip Forsberg. I mean, Arvidsson has flashes, but nothing about Nashville offensively makes me game plan around any one line. And I think that makes coaching against them a bit easier. Phil Kessel in the playoffs is Phil Kessel in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
When he decides to turn it on, he just turns it on, and he's very good. And I think, again, going back to the point of you're going to have games on back-to-back nights, and the Nashville-Arizona series, when I looked at it, their games is game 2 and 3 is their back-to-back games. So that's a series where you probably can't lose the series on the second game to back-to-back unless you get swept in the first 2 games. So you can probably start your second goaltender, and that favors Arizona with Darcy Kemper and Antti Ranta. I'm leaning towards Arizona in this one. I think Arizona in 4.
I'm thinking along the same line as you. I think this might be one that goes to 5. Just for the sake of having a bit of a different opinion than most. I don't think it's going to be as far along the spectrum as people may think. I do think it's going to be a tight series. I think it's going to be close. These are 2 good teams, regardless of the way they finish. But I do see it favoring Arizona.
Okay. Then we have Minnesota, Vancouver. This one could be different, but I don't see it being very spectacular.
No, this is one of the more lackluster series, I think. I have Vancouver winning this one, but not by much. I don't think it's going to be Vancouver coming in and steamrolling Minnesota. I think it's going to be a tight series, but it's going to be a boring one. That's kind of the way I look at it. Like, it's going to be close, but it's not going to be as exhilarating as some of these other series will be.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the games are going to be close, but I don't think the series is going to be close. I think it's a 3 or a 4 game series, and Vancouver winning because their top 6, much like we talked about Winnipeg's top 6, Vancouver's top 6 is lethal.
Totally, especially with the way JT Miller's been all year, and obviously bringing in Toffoli as well. Like they did some good things, and it could see them making a berth into the first official round here.
Okay, and then there's one more series. What series are we missing from the West?
What did we get here? Nashville, Arizona.
Edmonton.
Is it just Calgary, Winnipeg that we're missing?
Yeah, Calgary, Winnipeg. That's the last one, yeah.
So we talked the one that we've been talking about this whole time. Honestly, man, I think Winnipeg is going to take this, but I don't think the Flames are going to bow down without a fight. I see this one going 5, and I see this one leaning towards Winnipeg.
I agree entirely. I'm taking Winnipeg in 5 because I think, with the question marks around who Calgary is going to ride into the playoffs as far as their goaltender, and not knowing who your Game 5 goaltender is going to be, I think, is a big deal. And you know who the Game 5 goaltender for Winnipeg is, and I'm taking Connor Hellebuck in that matchup most times, and I think Winnipeg in 5.
Totally. I'm on the same page.
All right, so moving on to the East, we have Pittsburgh, Montreal in the East.
I think it's a no-brainer to say Pittsburgh should really come out on this one. Obviously Montreal was the last team in. They had a 500, or was it 500 or 512? I think they finished 500 record.
Yeah.
They were like the bottom of the barrel. They just barely made this thing. And Pittsburgh's been we know Pittsburgh's a playoff team. There's no stopping Sid and Gino and the boys when it means the most. I think you can rely a little more on Matt Murray. Like, I know he was streaky up and down. There was a lot of trade talks this year and rumors about him going elsewhere. But I feel like when it comes down to it, this break is going to serve a lot of a good purpose for these kind of players that were fringe kind of bubble trade guys and having a rough year. I feel like if they really took the time and conditioned themselves during this break, anticipating that they were going to come back, I think Matt Murray's one of those guys. And I think that obviously the tandem with Jari as well, like you said before, I'm taking that over Price and whoever. And I think this series goes to 4.
Yeah, I'm seeing that the same way. I think Price is going to steal them a game. Their back-to-back isn't till games 4 and 5, so I'm not overly concerned over who we decide to start in net, because I don't think Mike Sullivan's a guy, he's going to ride the hot hand. He's not going to favor one goaltender or the other. If he sees the need to make the change, he's going to make the change. I think Matt Murray's going to be the game 1 guy. But beyond that, I don't think there's any guarantee as to who starts game 2, 3, or 4. But I like Pittsburgh in 5. I think Evgeny Malkin, over the past week and a half, seeing the training camp videos, watching the intra-squad scrimmage games, that guy's got a chip on his shoulder, and it looks a lot like 2009 Evgeny Malkin right now. And I think that's got to be a scary prospect for the rest of the East.
Totally. And like you said, like I think one of the best things about this break is the ability to come back healthy for this team too. So
yeah, that's something they haven't had all year. Like literally from game 1, we haven't had that. So, and
they've still been like incredible, which was awesome to seeing guys step in and step up. So
yeah. Let's see. Do we have Carolina, New York Rangers?
Oh man, I honestly haven't put a whole lot of thought into it because I don't exactly know which way this is going to go. I mean, do you want to start and maybe I can try to pick up the pieces?
So news out of New York over the past couple of days following the Athletic beat writers, it looks like Igor Shesterkin is going to be the game 1 starter for the New York Rangers, which I think was the best decision going in. He was phenomenal. Up until he got hurt in the car accident a few months back. It was a few weeks before the season paused. Carolina's a team that's going to try to possess you to death. They're just going to try to shoot the puck 50 times and only let you shoot 10. But on the same token, New York is that same exact style of team. They have a top line that can really force you back into your own end with Panarin, Zibanejad, all those guys. I think Zibanejad ended up tied for the Rocket, if I recall correctly, with 43 goals, or he was like 2 behind. No, he was 2 behind.
I think he was 1 or 2 behind. Pasternak, he was shy. But not by much. Not by much. And it almost came out of nowhere, it seemed. Not to say Zibanejad hasn't been good his whole career, but he's kind of been one of those fly under the radar guys. And I got to see him a lot in Ottawa. And I don't think he necessarily got the credit that he deserves during his time there. And then obviously that trade out of Ottawa was not a very nice one. But yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that I think I gotta go with the Rangers on this. Shesterkin is going to be the game changer, I think, and obviously Panarin, he makes everybody around him good. He made Strome look incredible this year. Like he did a really good job of making guys around him look good, in addition to having an incredible season with a bunch of young players. So I think I'm going to lean with the Rangers over Carolina on this one, and I think this one gets done in 4.
Yeah, I'm leaning the same way. I think goaltending is pretty important. So which goaltender finds their groove early. I like Shesterkin in that matchup because um, I know Mrazek's been very good for them the past couple of years, but I don't see him as a top tier playoff caliber goaltender right now.
I
Next
agree.
series we have the New York Islanders and the Florida Panthers.
Another one that kind of reminds me of the Vancouver Minnesota series. This is kind of I look at this as the Eastern version of that series,
Mm-hmm.
a series that's not going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be tight because it's tight, not because it's exciting or anything along those lines. I think I lean more towards the Islanders in this series, but that's not to say that Bobrovsky can't steal the show. I mean, he's got a lot to prove after a season, after signing a $10.5 million deal and not showing up like a $10.5 million goalie. So,
Yep.
I mean, a lot of things could shift in Florida's way. I mean, obviously having Sasha Barkov in the lineup and Huberdeau had a great year as well. There's a lot of underdogs on that team that could be game changers, but I think at the end of the day, this is going to go the distance. I see this one going to 5, and I think that the Islanders come out on top.
Yeah, I'm leaning that same way. Speaking of not exciting and New York Islanders hockey kind of go hand in hand, especially since Barry Trotz got there. But that's not discrediting what Barry Trotz does. It's just the system that he coaches. It lends itself to being boring hockey, but players buy into what he coaches.
Totally. That's the biggest thing is his buy-in. He gets everybody bought in on his system.
Yeah, and they're just a great defensively structured team. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be 1-0, 2-1, 3-2 type games, and that's the kind of games that the Islanders like to play. I'm leaning towards the Islanders in 5 in this one as well. But Bobrovsky could be an X factor. He was an X factor for Columbus, Tampa Bay last year. So, who knows if that can happen again. And the final series, I know you have a co-host on one of your other podcasts that would be very intrigued to hear your takes on this one. The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, AP, if you're listening. But yeah, it's. I think it's going to be one of those ones that are like obviously everybody's got Toronto slotted to win this thing, but I don't think that's discredit or like it's not giving enough credit to Columbus because I still think that they're a very solid playoff team. Obviously, they've got a very good system in place. The Jack Adams nominees will certainly vouch for that. But I think that, oh God, how do I say his name? Elvis Merzlikins.
Yep.
It's a lot of consonants and weird placement of vowels. But Merzlikins, like he's another one that's like Shesterkin that could honestly just take over. And I mean, I think blue line wise, I think Columbus has Toronto outbeat there. But for natural and raw scoring power, I mean, like it's hard to compete with the top 6 in Toronto, and even the Jason Spetzes of the world who slot into the bottom 6 and found their role in Toronto. And obviously, when Sheldon Keefe came in and he was able to play those players the way that they were supposed to be played, opposed to the Mike Babcock system, calling on Tyson Barrie and Jason Spezza. I think that Toronto wins this one. I think it gets done in 4. I think Columbus can sneak a win out of here, but I don't think that there's much more to say than Toronto should really take this one.
Yeah. So I projected the Columbus Blue Jackets to finish dead last in the Metropolitan Division. I thought they were going to be a lottery team, losing Panarin, Matt Duchene,
all those acquisitions, Dzingel, everybody.
Dzingel, Duchene, Bobrovsky, Panarin, like that was the core of your team during your playoff run last year, and you shipped them all out and left them all walk in free agency. So I had them slated to be obviously bottom of the league. John Tortorella has that team buying in, like telling them they're underdogs, telling them they're supposed to lose, and kind of just keeps sending his team out there to prove everybody wrong. You had Jonas Korpisalo step in at the beginning of the year. He was fantastic in net for them. He got hurt. They brought in Elvis Merzlikins. He played phenomenal for them. Then they brought in the third, the Russian goaltender that played some time for them. I can't even remember his name. It's another one with so many vowels in it. He played phenomenal. I'm just finding it really, really hard right now to even look at the rosters, put them side by side, and know that Toronto has a roster that looks like a 10 in the club, and Columbus has got a 4 sober. And if you get really drunk, you might be able to get her up to a 6. But I don't know. I'm just having a hard time just convincing myself that Columbus is not going to win this series just because of the John Tortorella factor.
That's a very legitimate counter. And I also think that, to further your point, Toronto doesn't have the playoff success that they should. Obviously, like I think they should have a cup by now. If I'm being brutally honest with you, they should have a cup by now. And maybe it was the Mike Babcock system. You can also put an argument in for Sheldon Keefe. He coached a hell of a Marlies team, and a lot of those players graduated to today's Leafs team. So if you want to talk about buy-in, you can also make the argument for Sheldon Keefe and some of the people that he's got under him now. But I would totally agree with you in the sense that it may not be as clear cut as it may seem. I still think Toronto might come out on top in this one. But I don't think it's going to be without a lack of trying for Columbus. And obviously, this, like you said, the system Torts puts in play is incredible. He's up for an award for it this year. So I don't think it'll be the last time we see him nominated for this award. He's a hell of a coach. So but I would totally say that he's one of those, or like they're one of those teams that it could go either way. So I guess time will tell. We'll find out.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be a really fun series to watch, though. I really
for sure. It's going to be fast paced and banging bodies. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, that'll about wrap us up here. All the predictions and everything. We'll see how they go. We can bookmark this, come back later, and find out how dumb we all were in the past. But until then, let us know where we can find you at, Auddie.
Yeah, so I'm on YouTube, Auddie James. If you just type in YouTube and type my name in, it'll come up. Lots of hockey talk on there. Just try to keep up with current news, do lots of memorabilia stuff. That's kind of been a passion of mine since I was young. So try to incorporate that into the channel as well. And on Twitter, at Auddie James as well. On the road to 1,000 followers there. So we'll hopefully be there soon, maybe by the end of this playoffs. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube or on Twitter, and I'm also on Instagram if you type that same name in as well. So,
all right, man. Appreciate you taking the time to join me here. Again, you can find me on Twitter at SkiMiner36. Follow the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts: Apple, Google, Spotify, all those fancy places. So you can always find them there. Thanks, everybody. Until we see you next time, have a good day.